Welcome to The Blast Zone, the podcast where we dig up the bombs that shook Hollywood and try to find out why they went up in flames. This week, the movie that made Hollywood say to Troy Duffy, "Why don't you make like a tree and get the fuck out of here?" This is the Boondock Saints. Welcome to The Blast Zone.
Welcome to The Blast Zone.
We are not a podcast about bad movies. We are a podcast about movies that did badly.
That's right.
I'm Jon Drake, in-house film critic of my Letterboxd account.
And I'm Ian Dukes. I'm a person with thoughts and feelings, and some of them are about movies.
Movies like The Boondock Saints, which we're going to be talking about today. Ooh. But before we get into that, Ian, how you doing?
Let's put it this way. I went to the grocery store today, and I managed to check out without a cheesecake or a coconut cream pie in my cart. I'm calling that a victory. On the emotionally driven dessert scale, I've backed down. I'm at threat level yellow, which is somewhere in between fresh fruit and buttermilk donuts.
Passing up a cheesecake is never a victory. That is a failure, in my opinion. You've lost the battle, sir.
Oh, no.
Cheesecake is always appropriate. No, I just flubbed our opening line that I've said 68 times without having to do a second take of it. I think we had to do 5 takes of it to get it right. Welcome to The Blast Zone, the podcast that... Welcome to The Blast Zone, podcast that digs up the bomb that shooks Hollywood. Oh my God. And try to... Oh my God. Can you pause the music? How did I forget this? That should give you an idea of where my head's at. A little foggy in the brain space, but that's okay because this is a movie that's built for foggy brain spaces. I'm in the right headspace to tackle this bad boy, but it's a little too soon for that. Constant listeners, you know how it goes. I got to ask Ian, what did you watch this week? And you teased me. You said you were going to talk about one thing and then you switched it up on me at the last minute. So I don't know what you're talking about today.
Well, I'll tell you. This week, I watched a revenge fantasy about a pair of good-hearted but dangerous brothers who set out on a mission to right wrongs, work their way up a chain of a criminal organization, committing a series of morally questionable assassinations. That's right, I watched The Terminalist.
I was going to say, is this The Terminalist? It's one of my favorite Ian bits, though, is tying what you watched this week to the movie of the week.
I never let you guess. I'm too excited to spring my joke. Yeah, Terminalist has a bunch of things in common with The Boondock Saints, but thankfully not too many things. New series out on Amazon for people who haven't heard of it, starring the inimitable Chris Pratt, and starring a couple of our Blast Zone favorites, founding father Taylor Kitsch.
Patron saint of the Blast Zone.
Patron saint, seafaring damsel, Jean Triplehorn as well, from Waterworld. I thought it would be too dumb. I thought this was going to be a dumb action movie and that Chris Pratt would be acting too seriously, which we've accused him of lately. But it's actually a smart contemporary thriller. It's got a lot of good hooks to the psychological thriller part of it. And turns out Chris Pratt's character has very good reason to be as serious as he is being. I'm halfway through it. And it's really fun. I'm having fun with it. I don't know where it goes from here, but...
Yeah, you mentioned this. I actually also heard Chris Ryan talking about this pretty recently on a podcast where he compared it favorably to The Gray Man. He said, like, The Gray Man is trying to do too many things at once, whereas The Terminalist truly feels like a throwback to kind of like 80s action stuff, what you'd see. And I watched the first episode today based on your recommendation and liked it.
Cool.
Weird to hear Chris Pratt dropping F-bombs. Like, that threw me off because he's been in mostly PG-13 family-friendly stuff in the past few years.
Yeah.
And I do miss his goofball persona a little bit. Like, it feels like every project he takes on is getting progressively more grim. But like you said, there's some justification for that here.
Yeah.
And I made a bold prediction about this show back in our Battleship episode. I don't know if you remember.
I don't. What did you predict?
I don't know if I want to say it now. About the Taylor Kitsch character, like what he's up to. As much as, like, sure, Taylor Kitsch has been in the Blast Zone a couple times. He had a few high-profile bombs. He's got more on the way. But we bear him no ill will. I've espoused my love for Friday Night Lights many times on this podcast.
That's right.
And
sure have.
He's a big part of that. And I find him winning, even in these movies that maybe aren't. So I'm excited to see him. There's a TikTok video going around, I think I sent it to you, of Taylor Kitsch just like tolerating Chris Pratt's shenanigans on like the late night talk show circuit.
Yeah.
He does not seem like the extroverted goofball that Chris Pratt might be.
It's weird because Pratt, as we've noted, got more and more serious, especially in this. He's a fucked up character in this. It's really dark. And he got really weird on the talk show circuit, and Taylor Kitsch wasn't going there with him, which was really a funny dynamic.
I mean, Chris Pratt made his bones mostly as a comedian, not like a stand-up or a sketch comedian, but he was a big part of a lot of comedies. Obviously, his most famous role up until Guardians of the Galaxy was Parks and Rec, where he was like famous for improving on set, coming up with a lot of jokes on the fly. Like, he's got a comedian spirit. Yeah. So I think he lets that go a little bit on the talk show circuit. And Taylor Kitsch just seems like a guy who wants to say his lines and go home, but Amazon's forcing him to do the late night circuit against his wishes. Do you want to hear what I watched this week?
Nope.
Correct. I watched Nope, the movie from Jordan Peele.
How did that happen? This was the first time I ever ever didn't want to hear, and yet I
I
somehow
know.
acknowledged you nevertheless.
What are the odds? You're just so excited to talk about the Boondock Saints. You did not want to hear about this new movie from one of our brightest stars, Mr. Jordan Peele.
Now that you brought it up, I'm a little bit curious.
I really liked it. I'm going to be vague because it is a spoilable movie, but I'm really kind of surprised and pleased with the trajectory of Jordan Peele's career. I knew who he was when he was on Mad TV. He was very talented. I always thought he was the stronger half of the Key and Peele duo, as much as I love Keegan-Michael Key. Jordan Peele just struck me as having more range. He could be the straight man or the super silly side. And now he's just like one of the great horror movie directors of a generation. He's probably the best horror movie director of this generation. It's him and Ari Aster are the only two I could think of in contention. He's like a director that can open a movie based on his name, which how many of those do we have anymore? Not even Spielberg could do that with West Side Story.
That's
and
true.
Here's Us, made over $200 million. Get Out was obviously a huge success, which gave him this kind of cachet. And Nope is tearing it up at the box office too. And it's really a fun at times, harrowing at times movie. Daniel Kaluuya might be the best actor of our generation at this point. He's shown so much range just in the few roles he's had, everything from obviously his breakout role in Get Out. He's been in comedy series too that he's had to hide those chops away, but he started off on Skins, which was a comedy in the UK.
Oh, okay.
I loved him in Judas and the Black Messiah, playing such like an electric, bombastic character in Fred Hampton. And he's so muted here, kind of dour, but still magnetic. You just can't take your eyes off him when he's on screen. Keke Palmer's great in this. Stephen Yeun's character. This is very interesting. Like, I'm really excited for you to watch this so we could talk about it more in depth, just the two of us, because I have a lot of thoughts and ideas that I can't really get into here. I want you to go into it with a clear mind, spoiler free.
Thank you for that. But yeah, we'll have to wait and hopefully get around to it later.
We'll never be able to cover it on here. It made $50 million opening weekend. It seems like it's got legs too. The Sunday receipts were as high as the Saturday receipts the first week.
Wow.
And then I went and saw it on a Tuesday night, and it wasn't packed, but it wasn't empty either. Tuesday evening. It wasn't even nighttime yet, really late afternoon. So it seems like people are hitting the theaters for this one, and that's just great news in and of itself.
Good for the movie business. Bad for our podcast.
Bad for our podcast. But we can't delay it anymore, Ian. It's time to talk about the Boondock Saints. I need to know.
Oh, man.
What was your role in this movie? Were you the sound engineer, the boom mic operator? Are you one of the Boondock Saints? Are you one of the brothers? Are you Sean Patrick Flanery?
I was for a while. Actually, not during this movie, but for a while he had me take over his career just to keep the seat warm. No, I have very little experience with this movie, strangely enough. We'll talk about how this movie got made. And a lot of that time period in LA hits home for me because I was still, I think, trying to do my own rock band in LA during that time. So I recognize these dudes, not literally, but figuratively.
Their ilk.
I see them. I know who these guys were. But the movie itself, no, I vaguely knew that it existed. I brushed up against the concept of the movie at some point, but I never got pulled in enough to actually watch it. A lot of lore and mythology behind this movie, and I came to it totally fresh.
A lot of lore and mythology behind the movie. Does the movie deserve all that, though? Is there more hubbub around this movie than it actually warrants? I guess we'll get into it, but I was 12 or 13 when this movie came out. So I was like the perfect age, but I don't think I discovered it right away. I've always been a movie guy. I always loved movies. I read Empire. I read Entertainment Weekly, tried to keep up on what was going on. And it must have been a couple years after the actual release of the movie where I found it when I was like 15 on DVD based on somebody's recommendation. And it felt like holding something that was like a little illicit in your hands.
Right.
You know, this movie didn't get a theatrical release. There was a lot of buzz around that. You knew it was fucked up and violent and crazy and was like, whoa. And then I watched it. And I don't know how much this was me talking myself into being like, that was great, but I did like it. I watched it a few more times with friends over the years, and then it just faded. By the time the second one came out, I lost interest. I do remember watching the second one. I definitely don't own it, so I must have gotten like a Netflix DVD in the mail situation and being underwhelmed, and I think maybe my taste had changed. I think the consensus is that the second one is not beloved even by most of the fans of the first one, so it's probably just a weaker movie. There's something to be said for the amateur's ambition in this movie. One of the best things I could say about this movie is it does not feel formulaic. I mean, in some ways it does, don't get me wrong. But Troy Duffy clearly didn't go to film school. He's like flying by the seat of his pants here, and that makes some of the scenes feel unique to this movie.
Right.
But then in other ways, it makes it feel like a very low budget amateurish production. So it's not a complete failure, but no, I didn't enjoy this movie this time around, having been almost 20 years removed from the last time I watched it, probably.
I think the opening thoughts from both of us on this are, it's not a very good movie. I hope that doesn't offend any of our listeners who are still clinging to their memories of it. But like you said, you encouraged everybody last week to be like, if you watch this movie as a teenager, please give it another watch before you you hear us trash it because you may have a revisionist approach this time around.
And it's okay to like something we don't like. We're certainly not saying you're wrong. These are just our thoughts on it. Sure. And it's also okay to like something because you liked it when you were a kid. I think there's definitely been some of that in my reviews of movies on this podcast. I think I was probably kinder to Evolution than it deserved because it was one of my faves as a kid, even though I wasn't that nice to it. Like, I still came away enjoying the experience of watching it, probably because it evoked something nostalgic in me.
That's fair. Love is love. Like what you like. But if you're too attached to this movie, we might offend you because we're going to have a lot of shit to talk about it.
Yeah, after that nice segue there, I did not like this movie. And I don't like Troy Duffy based on not only the contents of this movie, but another thing we encouraged listeners to do is try to find the documentary Overnight. We gave you some spots where you could watch it for free. It's on Tubi, Crackle, a bunch of other stuff. But Tubi and Crackle are really all you need because they're both free apps that you can watch movies on them with ads. And that shed a lot of light on maybe what went wrong with this movie and what went wrong with Troy Duffy in his career, because he has not had the most illustrious Hollywood career for somebody with the hype machine behind him that he had when this movie was in pre-production the first time.
It's a movie where you get to hear what Troy Duffy's mom thinks is wrong with him and encourage him to act better and get over himself. And she doesn't help. No one can help the man. It's a real masterclass in hubris.
Bless her heart for trying, but he pretty much yells at her for trying. Did not come across very well in there. And it can't all be editing, man. It's a 2-hour movie. They couldn't have found like 500 out of context shitty things for this guy to say.
Yeah, there could have been some moments during this time in this man's life where he actually had a little bit of self-awareness, where he actually was real for a minute, was focused on the work and not the impression he was making and other people's opinion of him and his opinion of them. But it certainly seems like that's all he was about, just wrapped up in this in an absolute tornado, an absolute Independence Day 2 tornado of alien ships of negative emotion swirling around him.
But what does every tornado have?
An eye.
An eye, even if they're made of alien ships that are CGI. He does seem to have recognized some of the flaws in how he went about trying to break into Hollywood. Listening to some interviews with him that are more recent. He acknowledges that he said everything in Overnight. The filmmakers probably had an agenda against him, according to him, which, sure, if you met him at that point in his life, I think anyone would have an agenda against him because he's a fucking asshole. I don't know if that's still true, but he does seem to maybe not regret necessarily what went down, but at least recognize his own part in it. An unintended consequence of Overnight, though, is it was a little bit ahead of its time with everyone looking at the camera in The Brood and his hanger-ons being like, fuck Harvey Weinstein, he's a piece of shit, I hope that guy dies. And everyone must have been aghast in 2002 or whatever this movie came out. And now everyone's like, oh yeah, so those guys weren't wrong about everything.
That's an interesting extra wrinkle to this movie because Harvey Weinstein is the big bad in it. And he's for real. We have a lot more understanding now than we did then. I think Hollywood people knew even then. He was clearly throwing his weight around to make sure this movie didn't succeed after he parted ways with Duffy. People knew that this guy is a real bruiser, at least on the Hollywood business side. And they didn't know maybe about all the other horrible stuff that was going on. But now, in light of that, it's a great documentary because there's so much drama in it. And that's just one of the angles.
Yeah, I think I became aware of Harvey Weinstein's reputation of being like a brute, kind of a megalomaniac, because of, embarrassingly enough, the show Entourage had a character that was heavily influenced by Harvey Weinstein. Hold on, let me look it up real quick. It was Harvey Weingard was the character on Entourage. Clearly like a very, yeah, exactly. But he wasn't even disgraced by that point. Oh, Harvey Weinstein's from Queens?
Oh, man.
Weinstein and Trump, man, we can't get a fucking break. Yeah, so that's where I became aware of his reputation. And then obviously the more I got into the behind the scenes stuff of Hollywood, reading books, I learned he was kind of an asshole. And then when the New York Times piece dropped, it was like, oh, he's just a fucking monster. And I guess based on the way there were all these thinly veiled allusions to how bad he was in other movies or fictionalized retellings of Hollywood stories, it seems like a lot of people in Hollywood knew, and they maybe didn't protect him, but certainly didn't go out of their way to correct his behavior, which is a real bummer.
I mean, he was legitimately dangerous, and we saw the heroism of the handful of people in Hollywood that actually stood up to him, even when really awful stuff was on the line. And you hope you had the strength of some of those people who stood up to him. But a lot of them, as we talked about last week's show, had their careers just ruined for pushing back.
And of course, RIP to the great Paul Sorvino, who died in between the recording of our last episode and the release of this one, who stood up for his daughter Mira, who refused to give in to Harvey Weinstein and saw her career suffer for it. It's a sad story, and who knows how many other women in Hollywood to deal with it. There is a movie coming out about the New York Times reporting on it that's getting Oscar buzz. The title escapes me right now. I'll try to put it in the show notes.
Interesting.
But it's going to be coming out before the end of this year, I'm fairly certain. So it'll be interesting to watch, and certainly a difficult one. We've kind of veered into talking about the making of this movie a little bit, but do you want me to get into some more details?
Yeah, let's hear the whole story, how this thing happened.
All right. Troy Duffy had a vision. Originally from beautiful Hartford, Connecticut, Duffy moved to Hollywood in his 20s with dreams of making it big. You might be surprised to find out, though, he didn't move to LA to pursue a career in film or TV. He thought a change of coasts would help him break it big with his band, which at the time was called The Brood.
And would later be called a failure.
While working shifts as a bartender at West Hollywood dive bar Jay Sloan's, Duffy grew disillusioned with LA and also humanity, particularly after witnessing a harrowing scene of a dead woman being wheeled out of a drug dealer's apartment that was in Duffy's building. Some accounts of the incident even include a detail of the drug dealer going through the dead woman's pockets for money as she was being wheeled out. This inspired Duffy to write the script for what would eventually become the Boondock Saints, as he said, and I quote,
"I decided right there that out of sheer frustration and not being able to afford a psychologist, I was going to write this. Think about it. People watching the news sometimes get so disgusted by what they see. Susan Smith drowning her kids, guys going into McDonald's lighting up the whole place. You hear things that disgust you so much that even if you're Mother Teresa, there comes a breaking point. One day you're going to watch the news and you're going to say whoever did that despicable thing should pay with their life. You think maybe for just a minute that whoever did that should die without any fucking jury. I was going to give everybody that sick fantasy and tell it as truthfully as I could."
Okay.
The script focused on two fraternal twins from Ireland, now living in Boston, who receive a vision from God and begin a quest to kill evil people within their city. That includes murderers, drug dealers, rapists, guys who pay money to jerk off, you name it.
Well, he covered it. That's all the bad guys.
He completed the script in fall of 1996 and started circulating it throughout Hollywood. It became a hot commodity, with several studios offering to buy the script and produce the movie, but Duffy eventually settled on Miramax as then studio head Harvey Weinstein offered to pay $450,000 to Duffy for him to write and direct the movie. They also agreed to allow Duffy's band to score the film and even buy Jay Sloan's, which Duffy and Weinstein would co-own. With plans to film in fall 1997 in Boston, casting for the film was an arduous process, with many of Duffy's top choices turning down the movie, and Duffy then pushing back against the studio's choices. Duffy began to have a more combative relationship with the studio and Weinstein, and Miramax would eventually pull out of the film before pre-production began, officially citing casting and location problems.
The problem location was anywhere near Troy Duffy.
Independent studio Franchise Pictures offered to fund the production at a budget of $6 million, less than half the $15 million budget originally offered by Miramax. Sean Patrick Flanery and Norman Reedus were secured to play the brothers, with Willem Dafoe signing on to play the third lead, eccentric FBI agent Paul Smecker. Filmed mostly around Toronto with some key locations in Boston, the film was completed, but a theatrical release was not in the cards. Between the Columbine Massacre and an exclusive deal with video rental giant Blockbuster, distributor Indican Pictures released the film on only 5 screens in the US for a few weeks. The few critics who reviewed the film at the time were unfavorable, but the movie would go on to develop a huge cult following through word of mouth, particularly among teenage boys and young men. DVD rentals and sales would eventually make the movie a financial hit, generating over $50 million in revenue for Franchise Pictures. However, due to the deal he'd signed to get the movie made, Duffy received no cut of this.
In Hollywood, that's called getting boondocked.
He later sued Franchise Pictures for a fair cut of the royalties, and also to secure the rights to make the sequel, which would eventually be released in 2009. The sequel got almost identical reviews to the first and was also a hit on home video, and Duffy has now said a third movie is coming soon.
Uh-oh, watch out.
Yeah, it was funny to watch this unravel on social media. He would tweet something in 2012, like, new Boondock Saints movie coming soon. And then Norman Reedus and Sean Patrick Flanery would be like, yeah. And then like 6 months later, they'd be like, nope. And then he'd be like, maybe a TV show for the Boondock Saints 3. And they'd be like, sure. And then like 6 months later, they'd be like, nope. And then in 2017, finally, I think Sean Patrick Flanery was the one who said, we're not making a fucking third Boondock Saints movie. And then in 2022, apparently it is happening.
Wow.
I pictured all of that as Troy Duffy announcing his plans to make a third Boondock Saints movie. Reedus and Flanery getting in a room with him, talking it over, and trying to develop the movie for 6 months, and then being like, I can't stand this fucking guy.
Yeah.
And just going, no, never mind.
You got to suspect. I think there's a really telling thing at the end of that nice long quote that you had from Duffy talking about how he came up with this movie. You're with him. You're like, yeah, modern life is terrible. Such horrible violence and depravity that you can sometimes feel like that guy should die without any fucking jury, as he said. And he was going to give us that sick fantasy and tell it as truthfully as he could. And it turns out as truthfully as he could was just not
very
truthful at
truthful.
all. It's just really crappy, cliche, and so colored by his weird worldview of bros pranking each other. Bros pranking each other is on equal level with we need to eradicate evil in the world. Those are the two themes of the movie, and they're given equal weight for some reason.
Yeah, it is really important that we get in there and break up this meeting of Russian mob bosses, but also wouldn't it be fun if we were silly for a minute? This is a very silly movie. There's a lot of jokes in this movie. They don't all land, or most, but like it's not the grim, dark, dark movie he's selling in that quote.
It's almost as if only the action gives you the grim dark part. And in between that, they're either screaming at each other in anger or in jest. But
friendship?
In friendships, a lot of friendship screaming in this movie.
Yeah, there is. Reading that quote from Duffy and also just listening to him talk, you get the sense that he would he's on Michael Douglas's side in Falling Down, the Joel Schumacher movie.
Joel Schumacher film shot by Jan de Bont.
Where he's the white collar worker who goes crazy, starts shooting up a fast food restaurant because they won't serve him breakfast because it's after 11. Like Troy Duffy's like, yeah, man, the world is crazy. You should have got your breakfast sandwich.
Yeah.
You should shoot those people. If one author writes the Punisher comics for too long, eventually they all go down the same storyline, which is like he's lost the ability to differentiate between crimes that deserve punishing and ones that maybe you can just let the cops handle. So he starts shooting jaywalkers at some point. Like Troy Duffy started there.
They're just like, God told us we got to shoot some guys and clock's ticking. Let's go.
Did God give them a time limit? It almost feels like it because they get to work. The second act of this movie is just massacres after massacres.
There's one beat where Rocco's like, yeah, God told you to kill guys. We should kill guys. And they're like, we only did it once so far. And that one kind of fell in our lap. So I don't know. But that's it's a very half-hearted little check moment. And then they just race forward after.
Yeah. Yeah, this movie's full of stuff that you could sense somebody in the room being like, oh, this doesn't really make sense. And Troy Duffy's like, I'll just throw in a line about something or other, one throwaway line, that'll explain it. And he's satisfied with that answer. He's like, I don't need to do any more digging. I don't need to come up with an actually artistic way to get these points across.
Yeah.
Why do they know what booth Ron Jeremy jerks off in at what time every day to watch Dancer? And they're like, we'll just have Rocco say he knows everybody. He's everybody's friend. He knows all the routines. And okay. But no, that's not a valid thing for a 38-year-old man or whatever David Della Rocco was in this movie to know about your boss.
That's a weird tragedy to explore right there. How do you know where Ron Jeremy is jerking off?
How'd you find out? Not just what strip club he goes to, but what booth he sits in, at what time and which day.
Yeah.
That's not information you come across casually.
But it sure is practical when you're trying to gun the man down in a hail of bullets.
Yeah, if they didn't have Rocco on their side, I don't know how they would have found anybody to kill. You kind of had a fun theory about that, but we'll get into that. Should we start walking through the story?
There's so much to walk through. Let's dive in.
All right.
Here we go. There's these twin brothers named McManus. They're Irish from South Boston, and they're tough, but they're also kind-hearted. So when some Russian mobsters try to shut down their friend's bar, they beat up the mobsters. But then the next morning, the Russians come back for revenge on the twins, and the brothers are forced to fight back and kill them. Brilliant FBI agent Paul Smecker, played by Willem Dafoe, is on the case, and within hours, he's close to figuring out who killed the mobsters when suddenly the brothers turn themselves in. After talking to the twins, the cops decide it was all in self-defense and let them go, and the local media celebrates the boys as heroes. After the night in jail, the McManus brothers decide that God has put them on a mission to destroy all evil so that good may flourish.
I love that the cops determined this was self-defense when one of the dead bodies clearly has a bandage asshole because they tied this poor fucker to a bar and lit him on fire. Where in the spectrum of self-defense does that fall?
Take it easy, bro. That was just a prank. That's the thing. They told the Russians that. Bro, it's just a prank. Relax.
Oh, I didn't know they said that. Yeah, if you tell them it's a prank, bro, then you got to let it slide.
That's a classic South Boston prank. It's called the Hennessy Hot Seat. You pour some cognac on a guy's pants while he's tied to the bar and you set him on fire.
Did you just make up a term for what happened in this scene? A Hennessy Hot Seat, it's catchy.
I watched the movie again. It's literally a bottle of Hennessy. I'm like, holy shit, that's like a thing. They're doing a thing.
I hope this doesn't catch on. Are your kids performing Hennessy Hot Seats on each other? More at 11. They learned it from a podcast.
Oh, God.
What have we done? Yes, let's get into this because the movie starts with a church scene. Their boys are Catholic because they're Irish and from Boston. So that part rings true. I was raised Catholic. I don't know if I've brought that up on the podcast before, but I was raised Catholic, went to Catholic school. I was an altar boy for about a week.
All right.
So I've been to my fair share of masses. I'm not a Catholic anymore.
Okay.
It's not a practicing one, but I don't recall any homilies from the priest that were graphic reenactments of murders and rapes. But this priest decides he's going to tell the story of Kitty Genovese, which is a true story that happened in Queens, where a woman was killed and raped, and there were many bystanders who saw it, and nobody stepped in to stop it. And it became this kind of parable to show the inaction of men is as evil as the actions of bad men. But it's a weird point to make it mass.
Yeah, especially when the story is already 35 years old when this padre brings it up. He's not like there's something in the news that we should talk about. It's like he's just digging up some old shit to make a point.
The brother slipped him like a $20 bill before the mass. He was like, can you talk about, I don't know, something about the inactions of good men? And he was like, I guess.
What? Do you have something in mind?
It's for a dramatic moment. I don't know.
But I looked it up. This may happen more than once in the movie. I looked it up, and a lot of the hubbub around that story, which is a true story, has since been a little bit debunked. The New York Times apologized for its coverage, they somehow inadvertently exaggerated the number of people who witnessed something and also glossed over the fact that several of those people actually did call the police. So it's not the incredibly horrific parable that it was originally perceived to be. But that didn't stop Troy Duffy.
That's a good tidbit. Thank you. No, it didn't.
We're going to probably hit a couple other debunked things that he uses confidently in the script.
Yes, some right in the opening montage of this movie. There's a few. But then the boys kind of interrupt the mass to go up and pray at the feet of Jesus and kiss his feet. And they're treated with this sort of reverence that we don't understand at this point. And it makes me question, like, when does this take place? Is this like a flash forward? That would make more sense.
It feels like it's out of time, but I realized on the rewatch, it's the morning of St. Patrick's Day, and the bar fight with the Russians happens the evening of St. Patrick's Day. So it's all contemporaneous, but it does feel out of time.
So you're telling me these guys are wearing their matching turtlenecks and peacoats just on a regular, like they haven't even been possessed by God yet? That's just like what they wake up in the morning and put on?
That brings up a point. It makes me think that this is supposed to tie into something else, including to their secret history, which we'll save to reveal towards the end of the movie for people who are watching the movie through our retelling here. It feels like it's a clue to something because, yeah, these boys are treated specially, and it's commented on by the movie. The visiting priest who gives the opening prayer doesn't know the neighborhood, and he sees the boys walking up to the altar right past the resident priest, and he's freaking out, and the other guys grab him and go, no, that's cool, let them do their thing because they're special kids. But there's never any explanation of what's their relationship with this priest, with this church, with their outfits, with their weird behavior, with their tattoos. All of it is like just left mysterious.
They're an odd pair for a lot of reasons, but it doesn't feel like people are afraid of them. They feel like they're given special treatment because they're better than everybody else. But like at this point in the story, I have no reason to believe that.
Not only are people not scared of them, the very next scene, which is the opening credits montage, is intended to make them seem cute and cuddly and like silly, wacky, dacky boys. Although maybe it didn't achieve that.
No, it did not. But first, I got to talk about the score during this whole scene. It's all fucking bagpipes.
Yes.
Which are Scottish, I believe. Does Troy Duffy think that Boston is in Ireland?
I don't know. Is the Prudential Building in Ireland? I'm not sure now. There's a lot of...
Yes, it's in Dorchester, Ireland.
Okay. So half of the opening montage is like a workplace comedy scene at the meatpacking plant, and the other half is just helicopter shots of Boston landmarks, which I don't really know because I've never spent time in Boston.
The Charlestown Bridge is in there, I think.
It's like a tourist guide to Boston. It's just like show some landmarks.
And this is supposed to be South Boston, which is historically an Irish neighborhood for sure, but it's not that fucking Irish. Like I've been there. I spent time in Boston. It's Irish to a point. They don't have Irish accents. If these kids moved to America long ago enough that they don't even remember what their dad looks like, they're not going to have these Irish rogues anymore. And to Norman Reedus' credit, he does not.
I was going to say, no, it seems like Norman Reedus is really losing his. Every other word, he loses it.
Sometimes it veers into a weird Brooklyn accent. Yeah. There is this thing with Irish Americans. They're very proud of their Irish heritage, which is great. Sure. But this feels like that taken to a comical degree.
Yeah.
Which is great because it makes the movie funny. And then let's talk about this meatpacking montage. The two boys work in the meatpacking plant, and they're just like doing shenanigans all around the plant. It reminded me of that scene from Wayne's World where they're at the Pepsi plant. Or no, it's not the Pepsi plant, but it's some beer plant, St. Paul Grill factory or something. Like they put a glove on a bottle and then watch it go around the thing. And it's just, it's so silly. They're hitting each other with sides of beef, throwing chickens around the room. Like I don't want to eat anything that comes out of this plant.
No, it looks terrible. Like they're cracking up their coworkers, but this is kind of gross, you guys. That's raw meat, and you're laughing and rubbing it in the other guy's face.
And then we get one of the more regrettable scenes in the movie where a large woman, her name is Rosengirdle Baumgartner.
Oh.
It's a good name. That's a good fake name. That's not the actress's name. The actress' name is Dot Marie Jones. Also a good name.
Sure.
Man,
great.
I bet she came up with her character's name. She's formidable. She towers over both the boys. She's much larger than them. They're trying to teach her the ropes because she's new to the job. And one of them mentions something about the rule of thumb. And she goes off on this big tirade about how the rule of thumb is an old domestic violence thing. You could beat your wife as long as you used a stick that was no wider than your thumb. The boys are not sympathetic. Maybe they knew that this was also a debunked thing.
Oh, wait, you saying that's not true?
That is not where the term rule of thumb comes from.
Oh, okay.
Based on your response, I suspect you knew that already.
I'm trying to affect Troy Duffy's response. To be fair, he didn't have quite the internet resources that we have today.
Troy Duffy's response would not have been, what? That's not real. He would have been like, fuck you. You don't know me. You think you're better than me because you know that the rule of thumb is not a domestic violence reference, and I fucking hate you, and I'm going to burn your life down.
That sounds right.
So they get into a fist fight with this new employee, and she beats the shit out of them. But then like one of them's jumping on her back. It's played for laughs, but
it's kind of for laughs. I'm not even sure because it's really just the credits sequence. So like it ends abruptly and is never referenced again. There is absolutely nothing to do with their job throughout the rest of
what does this whole sequence accomplish? That they're lovable scamps?
I thought maybe it accomplished getting them fired because it starts with them being joking and funny, and then they're trying to have a good time with training the new lady. She ends up mad. She kicks one of them in the nuts, but I think Norman Reedus punches her in the face to end that scene.
Yeah, he does.
And the boss goes, oh boy, like some kind of goofy comedy reaction. It's really weird. And then it just clicks out, you're done, and you never see that again. And you're like, what the fuck just happened? Did that mean they got fired? Is that why their evening starts off weird because they had a hard day at the office and got themselves out of a job? But no, they didn't mention that if that was supposed to be the case.
The boss has watched them ruin hundreds of dollars of meat by just hitting each other in the face with it. And he just puts his hands on his hips and goes, oh, you. But now they've crossed the line by beating up their coworker. Yeah, that's a valid reason to get fired. She did start it by kicking one of them in the balls.
But like nothing ever happens to these guys. That's the problem. Troy Duffy's like, can you imagine hitting rock bottom and seeing the worst possible thing happen all around you and then losing it and deciding to go off on a murder spree? And we're like, yeah, we can. And they go, yeah, but so what if nothing bad really happens and it was all in good fun?
Exactly. Like we're waiting for the tragic occurrence that's going to spur them on to their quest. And it just never happens. They just have a bad dream and they're like, we got to kill everybody. But we're putting the cart before the Irish fraternal twins, as they would say. The movie then starts introducing us to the wider world of the McManus brothers. And how does it introduce us, Ian? Through clever dialogue that highlights the character's backstory and gives us the lay of the land?
No, we don't got time for that, man. Give me a title card. I want to read off what each person's status is. What's the status of this character, I say to myself when they appear on screen?
It's a question every film goer, at least all the sophisticated ones like us, ask is, hey, what level of criminal is this guy? Can we find out in a helpful manner? So the movie just stops, freeze frames. So we get little typed out placards on each character. Rocco, status, delivery boy for the Yakavetta mob.
Status isn't even the right word. I'm trying to come up with a better, I'm trying to help Troy Duffy out. I'm like, when it says status, soldier, status, boss, that's not their status. That's their
title.
Or their title. Yeah. It's not even good. It's just badly written cards on top of everything else.
And this might feel like nitpicky, but I really don't like the font they used.
No, it doesn't look good.
Like if I sent that in for my job for a PowerPoint presentation, I'd be like, can you change the font to something more professional?
Yeah.
This isn't your fucking poster board in 7th grade science fair.
It's breaking up on the screen. It's not easy to read.
It's white. There's not even any stroke on the letters. It doesn't stand out against the background. It's not great. So then we go into this bar where the boys are pretty regular. You can tell that they're in there quite often. And the bartender, Doc, is pretty sad. He's losing his bar because the Russian mob owns the building and is raising his rent. They're just landlords?
Yeah, they're just evicting him.
So Troy Duffy managed to cram 3 of my least favorite comedic character ticks into one poor bastard. Doc has both a stutter.
Yep.
Tourette's syndrome and a habit of mixing up his idioms.
Right.
Which was what the opening joke was a reference to. Why don't you make like a tree and get the fuck out of here? He says a few of them. Not great. The actor's fine. He's clearly doing his best.
Yeah.
He's a well-known actor. He's since passed away. He also appears in the sequel, I believe. So this character's losing his bar, and wouldn't you know it, right as he's describing the circumstances that are leading to him losing the bar, his new landlords show up demanding he get out now. He doesn't even have till the end of the month or whatever.
No. And they're like, come on, dude. It's St. Patrick's Day. Have a beer. Let's chill.
They don't want to have a beer and chill. One of them, I swear, looks so much like a wrestler. He wrestled under Prince Albert in WWF. His real name is Matt Bloom, the main Russian henchman. I could have sworn it was the same guy, but it's not.
Oh, okay.
Drove me crazy. Like, maybe they just didn't credit him. But then I found the actual actor credited. But like, it's got to be Albert. But no, it's not. For any wrestling fans out there that remember Prince Albert, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So then the boys are trying to de-escalate the situation. You bring up a good point, which is going to be a running theme of this movie, that one character is the worst.
Fucking Rocco.
Rocco ruins everything.
The funny man. Yeah. This is the start of Rocco being too central to this movie. This is a movie where you cast a couple good-looking young actors. You crafted the story around these mythical folk heroes. Let them be in the middle of your movie. Don't put fucking Rocco in every scene screaming louder than anybody else. So he's basically shouting everybody down in the movie and instigating all the big plot points. I didn't even realize that he's the one who actually made the fight happen in the scene. But through the rest of the movie, he's the one sending them from one killing to the next. They're killing people pretty much all based on his ideas of, I know a guy who we should kill. And also here's another guy we should kill. And I'm like, let your heroes motivate your story, especially when they're on a crazy mission from God. Like, it's not a mission from God. It's a mission from Rocco.
We know how Elmo would feel about this plot twist that Rocco is so central to the story. Not a fan.
Rocco's got a lot of things he wants to do. Rocco!
And also, Rocco's judgment is terrible. So you're just going to take his word for it that you should go kill these guys? He makes mistake after mistake. He does morally questionable and morally reprehensible things throughout the movie. Never mind questionable. He does things that the Saints would have killed him for if he wasn't Rocco.
That's true.
Constantly.
Starting with his job. He's a fucking runner for the mob. Like, he's been doing
works the
shit,
mob.
giving rides to hitmen.
Because he felt bad about it. He deserves out. So what's the standard here? What are the rules?
The rules are just keep the heroes insulated. Make sure they can always just laugh and smile and everything washes off them until the end when they take a disgusting, horrible turn. But we have a lot to get through till we get there.
God, that's so fucked up. So then, yes, Rocco starts the fight. We already explained how the fight goes down. But the way the movie edits it is that we see the fight start and then we see the next morning where the cops are investigating these dead bodies in an alley. And this is a trick that Duffy comes back to repeatedly.
Yep.
But the first time I do think it works because it is such a bizarre scene they come upon.
It's an actual one of those detective mystery things. Like, how did these bodies get here and how did they
got bandages in weird spots. There's a toilet, broken.
Yeah.
There's bullets that seem to have missed the mark. So that works. And then we get to see Smecker, played by Willem Dafoe, like the real big actor of this movie, the name that they could get for this movie. And he's not bad. He's doing his level best.
He was into it for some reason. I don't know what that says about Willem Dafoe, but he's into it and he never loses the thread. Even though he gets asked to do weirder and weirdest things, his character goes off the rails later on. He sticks with it. Kudos to him as an actor.
No part of his performance is mailed in. He's really going for it. With I must point out, a 4-button suit? I didn't even know these existed.
It's too high. I can see Duffy chewing out the costume designer. Do you know who this is? This is Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
3 buttons is not enough. Get the man more buttons.
One of the other detectives showed up in a 3-button suit and Duffy was like, motherfucker, I told you Dafoe's got to have the most buttons.
Because they don't even look right. The top one is too high. It shouldn't be there.
And it's buttoned to the top too. So it's like, it's even worse.
It's all pinched and puffing out. It's really weird. It calls attention to itself.
I'm not saying I'm a fashionista or anything, but you button the top button on a suit, not all of them. If you have a 3-button suit jacket, you don't button all 3 buttons.
No.
You button the top one.
But the 4-button suit, all rules are off. You are in uncharted territory.
It's practically airtight. I think you can go into outer space with that thing. If he puts a helmet on, nothing's getting in there. And then this is a trope where he's an eccentric FBI agent. And I'm saying eccentric. I'm not referring to his sexuality there because there's nothing eccentric about being gay, even though he goes about it in maybe a way that's not quite true to the gay experience.
Okay.
I'm also not qualified to speak to the gay experience, but it feels like a gay character written by a straight guy who's never met a gay person.
Kind of does.
But he puts on his headphones and he listens to opera and he's able to visualize the crime scene. And he doesn't just visualize it. He dances around the crime scene.
Right.
He's a pretend conductor. It's very cheesy. I did not like it. There's certainly some Will Graham influence there because that was the protagonist of the Red Dragon novel. He has a similar thing where he can put himself in the crime scene and it helps him solve murders. But I don't know. Didn't this feel like maybe appropriate for the time, but when you watch it now, it feels like a remnant of an older way of filming investigations.
Yeah, it was probably in the movies and procedural network TV shows at the time. I took your point that he does some things that feel different because of all the weird shit that he assembled together, but scene by scene and bit by bit, a lot of the scenes do feel like just imitations or things he grabbed out of the movies and TV shows that he'd watched.
You could make a good movie that's essentially just homage. Quentin Tarantino's made a career out of it, but he's not pulling from the right references, I think, to make the movie he wanted to make.
No, because whatever he thinks of is the best thing that anyone ever thought of, unquestionably. And so he just throws it all in there.
And Keanu Reeves is a fucking poser and Ethan Hawke's a talentless piece of shit. I'm sorry, this is a famous Duffy monologue from Overnight. Famous to me.
Yeah.
How dare he attack 2 of my favorite little men?
I know.
Throughout the flashback, we do get a peek at the brothers' apartment. What did you make of their space, their skill as interior decorator?
It needs a little dressing up. It's got good bones, you would say. It's not even necessarily an apartment. It looks like an abandoned warehouse building that they've moved into one room on. It's got some communal showers with 90% of the tiles peeled off the walls, and it's just mostly bare concrete.
Square footage in Boston, though, you could probably get like $3,500 for that place. Why do they sleep on twin beds just next to each other, though? Like, you have all this space. You guys could sleep on opposite ends of I know it's like a studio setup. There's no walls, really, but you don't need to be like close enough to hold hands, or do you?
They get a lot of weird dreams. God sends them a lot of strange dreams, and they need to be like close to each other so they can communicate when they are awakened in the middle of the night.
I think it would have been funny if they had, because not only do they have beds right next to each other that are small, but like they have the same bedspread. They should have had like matching teddy bears.
Yeah.
Like a little blankie, because they're very childlike in some way. So let's talk about the mission from God and the way they receive it. They just wake up from a bad dream like, we got to kill everybody.
And I missed it. Did you hear them say that? I didn't hear it until the second watch, and I had to rewind it several times.
It's kind of like whisper shouted, which is
Yeah.
a dialogue device I'm not a fan of. They're out of breath. They seem very shaken up.
And they split the line. One of them looks and says, destroy all evil. And then the other guy says, so that good may flourish. And I'm like, first of all, what are you saying? Was that it?
They're trying to mumble it in their fake Irish accents, which is making it harder.
Right. While waking up from bad dreams in the middle of the night with the jail ceiling leaking water on them. I wouldn't just let that jail water leak on your face, dude. Get out from under that stuff.
Sleep at the other side of the bed. Let it hit your ankle.
Yes.
It's less problematic.
Wipe it off.
I think if you're going to base your hero's motivation to do pretty terrible things on a vision from God, you got to give us more. Maybe you don't have the money to shoot a conversation with God, or that probably wouldn't play very well either. But we need more than what we get. It's a little thin as it is. By a little, I mean extremely.
I think that was just poor filmmaking sense by Duffy, is that he thought they could just say it once and everyone would get it. And I totally didn't get it. Like, I was 15 minutes past this point and they seem to be secret agents and they're doing secret agent assassinations. And I'm like, oh, there's going to be a whole story revealing what these guys or why they're doing this. No, actually, they revealed it. They just said it so quiet you didn't hear it. Oh, okay.
What else did you need to talk about from this section?
Let me just make one more point. What we learned about these guys so far, they're super friendly. They just want to have a good time. They try to talk the Russian guys down from a fight, but nope, they had to have a fight. And then they do a funny prank fight and they just set their pants on fire and send them packing. And they didn't even try to...
No, Ian, call it by its proper name.
What did I call it? They did a regular old Hennessy Hot Seat, which is totally just a prank, bro. And it's fine. So just chill out. But the Russians couldn't chill out. So the Russians come back and are literally about to execute one of the brothers in the alley. And that's when they're forced to resort to deadly violence. And they do. And then the story sets them off on a reverse revenge. Like, I was trying to figure out, what do you call this? They go on a rampage in response to killings that they did. Nobody on their side got killed. They killed somebody. And then they're like, that's it. We cannot allow these killings that we did to go unpunished. We must go on a rampage. And then the rest of the movie is just them rampaging.
That's a very good point. We'll show you for getting murdered by us.
Yeah, that's the last straw. You're dead.
Wow. The premise of this movie does not hold up.
Well, now that we know what's motivating these guys, let's hear what else they do.
What do they get up to? Do they recognize the error of their ways?
I hope so.
The brothers get a tip that a Russian mob boss is in town for a meeting, so they crash his hotel room and assassinate all 9 mobsters in attendance. Then they run into their friend Rocco, a runner for the Italian mafia. They realize that Rocco was set up by his boss to be killed in a futile one-man attack on that same Russian mob meeting. So they convince Rocco to join their cause and start killing the mafia. First, Rocco kills some of his low-level associates in a diner. Then he and the brothers go to a strip club where they kill a mafia underboss and a couple other random street criminals. All the while, Agent Smecker is going from one crime scene to the next, trying to figure out who's doing these murders and why. The big mafia boss, Papa Joe, hires notorious killer Il Duce to kill Rocco before Rocco kills him. As Rocco and the brothers exit another house where they've just slaughtered a known hitman and his friends, Il Duce ambushes them in a hail of gunfire. All 3 are wounded but escape. Rocco loses a finger. So getting back to our point about Rocco, there was probably like a Rocco of the Russian mob in that room, right? Like their version of Rocco was in there. So they're just showing that the only reason Rocco gets a pass is because he's their friend. So they're really not about killing all evil. Rocco's just a rock.
Rocco's just a rock. Rocco's not alive.
Yeah, this is the Rocco movie. If Rocco had survived this movie, I would have been totally ready to see final scene where he winks at the camera and reveals himself to be the big evil behind it all, because you can hear everything that happened in this. And then they meet Rocco. Then Rocco did this, and Rocco tells him to kill the underboss. Then Rocco tells him to kill the hitman and all his friends. Then Rocco comes after Papa Joe. It's the Rocco show.
And he's sitting on the throne at the end of this in a real like Kaiser Soze moment. That would be great. Like he's verbal kin for all the whole movie, and then at the end he turns into Kaiser Soze.
Yeah.
I love that.
I don't know if we could have loved him.
No, I still would have hated him, but I would have been vindicated in my hatred because, he really was the bad guy.
That's true. That would have been more
He's
satisfying.
the bad guy here, but the movie doesn't think he is.
No, the movie thinks he's an innocent little hero.
And he gets up to some fucking shenanigans in this section, and I hesitate to call them shenanigans because they're dark.
Shenanigans.
I really grew to hate this character so much during this most recent rewatch because of the things he does in this section of the movie. It's pretty atrocious, but we'll do it in order and we'll get to it when we get to it.
Okay.
There's several things I could be referring to in this section of the movie.
That's true. You'll have to clarify, please.
Let's talk about this Russian assassination. This hotel room where this hilarious mob boss with the worst hair I've ever seen calls all his friends in just to yell at them.
In a theatrical way. He stands in the center of this big circular couch in this hotel suite, and he's just pivoting, and I'm doing it with my arms. He's just like making these poses and yelling in Russian.
Like every third word is Russia, though. So what is he yelling about? He's yelling in Russian about Russia.
He is a very strange character. Like if he was in a funny Wendy's commercial, he would go viral because he's so weird looking and acting.
He's got weird mannerisms. Like he puffs his chest out to a comical degree and like marches around the room with this weird posture.
He's got a very skinny face and neck, but a huge belly. He's just off.
And he's got like a bowl cut. So yeah, like I was sad to see him go because he's just hilarious to look at. I'm sorry, like that feels mean-spirited.
No, I'm totally with you. He was a cartoon character and he was just there to get shot down.
Fuck it. I'm committing to it now. I'm putting a picture of him in the show notes so you guys don't think we're just like body shaming people. He has a very unique look and I need you guys to see it. So then the boys fall through the ceiling and they shoot a bunch of people. We get this in flashback mostly, right?
The whole movie's flashback, man. This is where Chris Nolan got all his big ideas, watching Duffy.
Yeah, you think so? I would love to hear Chris Nolan talk, like monologue for an hour about the Boondock Saints. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
This is our first indication that the boys have really taken a holy bend to their killings because this is the first instance of the poem or the mantra that they speak before executing people. And we had the same exact thought. We texted it to each other. It's way too long to work in a movie.
It's so awkward. It's the family prayer, I guess is how they explain it eventually.
How do you hear this prayer and not know you're from a family of fucking vigilante?
It's pseudo prayer talk and it's all, and righteous are we, and it goes on, and you're like, oh my God, they're still talking? Because they say it before they pull the trigger and you're like, just kill me already. If you're that mob boss, you're like, enough, I'm ready to die. Pull the trigger, boys.
Do you want me to read the poem in its full state?
I don't, but you might have to.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to listeners who haven't seen the movie to know what we're talking about. So before they execute somebody, usually they save this for the big bad. They'll kill all the henchmen quick.
Right.
And then save the head guy so that they can read him this little poem. And it goes, and shepherds we shall be, for thee, my Lord, for thee. Power hath descended forth from thy hand. Our feet may swiftly carry out thy commands. So we shall flow a river forth to thee, and teeming with souls shall it ever be. In nomine Patri, et Filii, Spiritus Sancti.
I had a very nice, refreshing nap while you were reading that, so I feel good.
Weirdly, I blacked out for a second. I don't remember reading it, but I woke up now, and there's water on my face, and I have the urge to go kill some mobsters.
God's law supersedes all, so you're going to have to start killing.
Did this fucking priest serve on the Supreme Court? So then we get Rocco showing up. We find out that Rocco is here. It takes you a second to be like, huh? What's he doing there?
Right.
But it becomes clear that he was sent by Papa Joe to kill this mob boss. And the brothers, how do they treat their friend who is clearly stressed out and fearful for his life? They drag him to the center of the room and put two guns to his head and pretend they're going to murder him in cold blood.
Such pranksters.
It's way out of bounds then. They didn't say it's a prank, bro.
They should have said prank, bro. They do tell him to chill out. They're like, you stupid. We got you. We made you think you were dead. We got you because
we put a loaded gun to your head and you got scared.
Troy Duffy's sense of humor comes through in this. Like a lot of this washes over you and you don't really know what's going on. But once you go back and you see what's going on, you're like, fuck, this guy thought this was funny and cool.
Yeah.
It's bad.
It's cruel. It's not cool. And then like David Della Rocco does another one of my least favorite tropes in a movie is just having a character scream fuck a bunch of different ways. It's not a joke. You can't substitute that for a joke because he's running around them going, what the fuck? Who the fuck? How the fuck? Who fuck? And that's not funny. And then when we get the flashback to the killing scene, these guys, they fall through the ceiling by accident, get tangled up in a rope, still have time to each draw their guns and shoot all 8 of the henchmen before a single one of them gets their gun out to shoot them. It's starting to stretch the limits of credulity.
It's stretching the limits of every one of those words. Do they really have special skills? Are they really blessed by God? Do they have no skills? Are they really just goofy meat packers who don't know what the fuck they're doing with guns and ropes, but God is guiding their hands? Or did they have a history? Did someone in their family teach them the skills of elite level assassins and they didn't quite remember who that was? It's never explained.
Smecker makes a few comments about their shooting, that they're very accurate, very talented assassins. They seem like they're really at the top of their game. But as far as we know, like they were living simple lives before this. Where did they get all these skills?
We're going to find out at the end, but except we're not. They're not going to explain it.
We also meet Papa Joe in this section of the movie. Papa Joe Iacovetta. Interesting name. That didn't strike me as Italian right away.
It doesn't.
Not in love with the actor who plays Papa Joe, but whatever. He's actually, I've seen him in other stuff. He's a real actor.
Okay.
And he's not terrible in other stuff. He's been on TV a lot. I think I remember seeing him on Scandal because I used to watch Scandal when it was on. Cheap thrill, guilty pleasure type deal. I've never seen him in something and been like, he was great or he was terrible, but Pretty bad performance in this, I thought. Maybe it's the accent throwing him off.
There's a lot to throw you off as an actor, and just the scenes are bad with him.
And then we got fucking Ron Jeremy over here playing an underboss.
Which is just a downer to the scene from the get-go, the moment you see his face.
He's a terrible actor. He's a terrible person. He might be in jail, or he might be going to jail soon. We can hope. Yeah, he fucking sucks. And he sucked before we knew how bad of a person he was. He's a terrible actor. He also looks like shit. You pointed out his wardrobe is just embarrassing.
It's like Halloween costume props from Party City. They're like, give me the Elvis glasses and the funny wide collar shirt and the phony jewelry. And just pile it on him.
Not great. So after the hotel massacre, the boys and Rocco retreat to Rocco's apartment, where they get drunk and play with guns, because that's something our heroes should be doing. And wouldn't you know it, Rocco murders a cat in a hilarious scene, just uproarious laughter. He pounds his fist on the table and a gun goes off, because that's how guns work, and shoots a cat, just obliterates a cat. The only laugh I got out of the scene was when I think Flanery asks, is it dead? Which I don't know if that was written to be a joke, because that cat is just like a stain on the wall at that point. That's bad enough. But then Rocco's got a girlfriend that he keeps calling a junkie bitch. And that's her cat. And she's so terrible to him. She's the worst. And she comes home and yeah, she's fucked up, but she's fucked up in the comfort of her own home with her friend. And she goes, hey, where's my cat? And Rocco pulls a gun in her face and says, I shot your cat, you fucking junkie bitch. And puts the gun in her friend's face and is like, I'm going to kill you, basically. Right. I don't want to quote the dialogue, but it's like, he's terrorizing these two women. And what has she done to him at this point? He's just besmirched her name when we have nothing to back it up. We just got to trust him that she's real bad because she does drugs.
That's the worst thing he can say about her is she's done every kind of drug you could think of. Like, okay.
So what?
Yeah. And he's the worst piece of shit. He threatens both of them with the gun, but then he threatens himself. And so Duffy thinks he's trying to temper it. Like maybe that's supposed to make it okay. So he puts the gun to his own head. Like, if you can tell me that cat's name, I'll blow my own head off right now.
Oh,
but it's just, it's just all, it's awful. It's emotional terrorism for no good reason. And that's his shtick the rest of the time, is just screaming every scene with overwrought emotion.
Unearned. It seems like he's having a breakdown in every scene, but like we've never seen him when he's level. So that's just who he is. Like, why would you be friends with this person? And then he leaves these two women just like crying in a heap on his couch that he's just terrorized. But the brothers are like, oh, that's okay. That's just Rocco.
Yeah.
But they probably would have put a bunch of nickels on somebody's eyes for doing that same shit if it was anybody else. They've got a real blind spot for Rocco. And as we know, Rocco's just a rock.
Rocco! Rocco's a rock, Zoe! Rocco won't know the difference!
So then they go to a strip club to kill more people. I guess we should also, God, they kill so many fucking people in this section of the movie.
Oh, did we miss some?
Because Rocco goes to the diner before they go to the strip club.
Oh, right. He needs to be convinced that he was truly set up to be killed in that Russian hotel room. So he asks his other low-level mafia kids who hang out at this diner.
Who are 15 years younger than him.
And out of some 50s movie, they're like sipping, it's like a soda fountain.
Yeah, they got their egg creams.
Exactly, egg creams.
One of them is a hilariously bad actor. The guy with the curly hair. He's trying to play coked up. He's like, no, we set you up. We didn't say a word. Now they're going to know we're good fellas. Which is just, nobody talks like that, man. So then Rocco kills them all and the bartender. And then in another example of Troy Duffy being like, don't worry, we'll just throw a line in about it. Like, you had to remind me that they have a line in there about the bartender's also in the mob. Like, well, a word? That's his day job?
I tried to justify it to you, and then I finished my rewatch, and all I could come up with is that the coked out guy goes, oh yeah, the bartender knew you were set up too. So that was the immediate justification, was that he was among the people that knew that Rocco was going to die. And
so what if this poor bastard just overheard a conversation and he's scared now?
Right. And then later, I thought that the cops had said something about the bartender, but what they actually said about the bartender was that he was some fat ass. So no, that was not a justification. Now that I revisited that did not justify that killing.
Not at all. So that's the second massacre. Third, if you count the fucking cat. On to the next one, because this whole sequence of the movie is just bloody encounters. They go to a strip club where Ron Jeremy's character is hanging out. Vincenzo Lapazzi is hanging out at the strip club because, of course, Rocco knows what time he goes, what hand he jerks off with, what brand of paper towel he uses to clean his jizz up.
Yeah.
He's got it all. He's got all the facts. And he goes in and they shoot everyone in the strip club except the dancer, who passes out and then gets groped by Rocco while she's unconscious, because that's the kind of guy he is.
Paragon of virtue.
Just the guy you want fighting your holy war. So Vincenzo is there jerking off, which we know he deserves it because he's Ron Jeremy and also he's in the mob. But there's two other guys in the other two booths, and we do get a throwaway line about them being low-life scum or something. So they deserve to die?
Then Rocco, he's like, oh, can I kill somebody too? Because the brothers kill Ron Jeremy. He's like, oh, but I want to shoot somebody. And they're like, well, okay, go for it. I think that's what happened. A lot of the dialogue's hard to understand because these guys are all screaming at the top of their lungs at all times. or whispering.
And then, Rocco has a ball shooting these two poor bastards. He crisscrosses his arms. He's just having the time of his life.
Yeah.
And then he grabs a titty and leaves.
Which we're again seeing in flashback because our boy Smecker is there rewinding it all in his mind and figuring out what happened.
I was trying to talk about the things in the order in which we see them in the movie, but we just got to go in like the chronological order of the movie or it's going to be too fucking confusing. And like I said, the first crime scene is so bizarre that this narrative device actually makes sense there and works because you're like, what the hell was a toilet doing down there? Why is that guy got his butt all bandaged up? Did he have a Hennessy Hot Seat? But like the rest of them are pretty standard crime scenes, bullets and dead bodies. You can figure it out.
But, you know, Smecker is the second lead of this. He's the name actor, as you said, and he's got to go through his character arc, which is to get more and more worked up as he can't figure out what the fuck's going on.
So he solves the mystery of how this hit went down in his typical theatrical fashion, and then run to another location to murder people. Is this all of the same day? It seems like
fast.
It, right?
Yeah.
Rocco's like, I know a guy. He's just going through his Rolodex now. Like, we should kill this guy. He's like, I drove this hitman around, and he was a real crazy pants. He's not a good guy at all. You don't want him out there. So let's go kill him. He's having a barbecue at his house in a card game. So they go to this guy's house and kill him. They make Rocco actually kill the main guy, which is kind of a funny scene because he gets his ass kicked for a while and that made me smile. But this is really just a pretense for them to be at this location because when they walk outside, who's standing there? But Sir Billy Connolly playing Il Duce.
Knight of the British Empire. Or not knight, commander of the British Empire. How did he get there?
Il Duce, Italian for the Duce. He's just chilling. Billy Connolly, like one of the UK's most famous comedians, playing this almost silent hitman. It's like George Carlin playing the Punisher because he's also an elderly man. Kind of funny, but he's not bad in the role. He's convincing as Il Duce. He's probably one of the better performances in the movie. It's a terrible shot, though. These guys are standing 20 feet apart from each other, just emptying clips. The only thing that gets hurt is like a finger.
That gets really silly because they're firing so many bullets. He has this rack of holsters up and down his chest, and he's pulling out guns two at a time, standing right across. It's a little residential street, and he's standing in front of the car across the street, which, you know, gets riddled with bullets, and none of the bullets touch him. And there's three guys shooting at him from across the street.
Three guys, and two of them have two guns.
And this is not a boulevard, folks. This is a residential street.
It's got to be 30 feet away. You kidding me? And they do this thing, the McManus boys particularly, when they're shooting, they rock their arms back and forth like they're on slides, which that's not how you shoot a gun, man. You don't have to do that. The bullet will get there. You're not making it go any faster. They look like Rock'em Sock'em robots because there's like...
It is funny. I saw that. And they do it in slow-mo because we should have mentioned Agent Smecker gets there first. And so we're seeing all this again in flashback. Only this is the most intense flashback yet because now Smecker's in the flashbacks. What's going on here with this cinematic device?
You could see his fucking earplugs too.
Oh, I didn't catch that, but thank God they let him wear some because a lot of guns going off in his face. But yeah, they do that thing where he's not only talking you through it, he's standing there amongst them as he talks through it, and they're shooting in slow motion, and their arms are rock'em sock'em pumping back and forth. Very dramatic.
It's a cool visual to have him walking through the gunfight. Once you get past the absurdity of nobody getting seriously injured in this gunfight, it's not like poorly shot, except I guess how much credit do you want to give the filmmakers that they were like both sides of this are protected by God, so no one's going to get seriously injured. Like that's the only logical explanation you could really think for why nobody's dead at the end of the shootout.
That's the first one that makes sense. You're right. It's generous to the filmmakers, but it could explain both Il Duce and the boys have the same protection from God in heaven who is making the bullets go around.
Then I thought it was like smarter than I expected from this movie to have the boys spraying their own blood splatter with ammonia to screw up the lab testing of the blood to get a DNA match. So I Googled it and it kind of works.
Okay.
It's not foolproof. And between now and then, I'm sure like the technology's gotten better and now they can work around it. But apparently hydrogen peroxide is what you'd want to use instead.
Okay.
But they take all this time spraying the blood and don't bother to go look for Rocco's fucking finger.
Because they're tired of listening to Rocco just like we are. He's screaming, my finger, I lost my finger. And they're like, dude, just stop screaming. We can't take it anymore, bro. Get in the car.
Classic can dish it out but can't take it. Like, how many people have you murdered today? You're crying about your fucking finger?
Yeah.
It was going to happen eventually. Playing dirt, you get dirty.
And Smecker grabs the finger and he doesn't tell anybody.
Puts it in his pocket.
He's getting a little weird on us, you think?
He's starting to lose it. I always love the visual device of using a severed hand or a severed finger to unlock something or run a fingerprint. Just pick up the hand and put it on the fingerprint thing. I don't know why. That's like a trope I enjoy. So when he's doing that later, I was like, oh, he's doing the thing. Yeah, Smecker's clearly losing it. I did want to say it was nice that our stupid detective Greenlee, who's been the butt of a lot of jokes. Smecker's been making him become like an errand boy because he has no good theories about all the crimes that are committed. When Smecker's like, it was 3 shooters or 6 guys waiting for him outside and they got ambushed. And Greenlee's like, what if it was 1 guy with 6 guns? And then Smecker's like, I'll do the investigating, you piece of shit. But Greenlee was right. I think that's everything I had for this section of the movie. Should we take it home?
Yeah, let's take it home. So consumed by the case, Agent Smecker finally connects Rocco and the McManus brothers to all the murdering. But Smecker's conscience is torn, so he consults a Catholic priest who convinces him that the brothers' cause is righteous and ordained by God. Little does Smecker know that Rocco and one of the brothers are on the other side of the confessional wall with a gun to the priest's head. Rocco and the brothers then go to Papa Joe's house to murder him and any remaining members of his crime family, but they're captured by Papa Joe's men. Then Papa Joe executes Rocco, but Agent Smecker arrives, dressed in drag, and helps free the boys by killing all the mafia henchmen. Il Duce, who's inside the house, hears the brothers recite their family prayer over Rocco's body, and Il Duce realizes that the boys are his long-lost sons. The boys reunite with their dad, and then months later, when Papa Joe is on trial, the McManus twins and their father, Il Duce, take over the courtroom, and they ceremonially murder Papa Joe, reciting their incantation and making a speech declaring their murderous mission to the courtroom onlookers. And the public is left with mixed feelings about the whole deal.
Mixed feelings, huh? What they do at the end of this movie would be not super out of character for America, but would certainly be Jesus. I don't even know how to talk about it. It's
a Joker moment.
Yeah, it really is.
It's not a hero moment.
It's not a hero moment.
It's a horrifying live on camera. Although I realized on second watch that they actually kicked the cameras out. They just said, look, the people who are here, you have to witness this and you have to tell the world about us. And then they give this speech and they say a prayer and they execute a man publicly with 3 simultaneous guns to the back of his head.
One of which is a fucking shotgun.
Yeah.
There's no head to speak of.
No.
That had
thankfully, we didn't see it. They did that off camera, but you can surmise not much was left of Papa Joe's
after
cranium.
Forcing a young woman to open her eyes and stare at it. Like, Il Duce goes over to this young woman who's in hysterics and says, you have to watch. What are you going to do? She says, no. You going to shoot her? She's innocent.
I don't know. Yeah.
And then 2 9mm handguns and a 12-gauge shotgun fired at the same head at the same time. That's like a Scanners moment. That head is exploding. Probably getting on some of these poor people.
I know. They didn't even do the favor of doing it in the other direction. They're shooting towards the gallery where everyone's sitting. So it's all spraying at them. It's awful to imagine what just happened in that room after the camera cut away.
And they're rough with the innocent bystanders. They handle them roughly. They grab them by the arm and they throw them in their seats. And
chuck the judge around the room. Like, I thought they were going to shoot him for a minute.
They're not heroes, man. Terrible people. All right, but let's go through the movie in order.
Hit a couple more points.
Jesus.
In reverse, like Troy Duffy would want to do.
Right. We went out of order for a second because that shows you're a complex filmmaker. We talked about the priest moment a little bit already, but it's a longer scene than it needed to be, I think.
Yeah.
Where Smecker is convinced basically to help the Saints and to see things their way.
I can see that scene in Troy Duffy's mind. Imagine this. The cop is drunk. He stumbles into the confession booth. The priest goes in. Rocco goes in and holds the priest hostage. Then Doyle, or whichever McManus brother it is, jumps in behind them. Is there even a Doyle? I don't know. I didn't learn the guys' names.
There's no Doyle.
Murphy. They got Irish names. Something like that.
It is Connor and Murphy. You are correct.
He goes in behind Doyle. Rocco, holds a gun to Rocco's head. So it's a 3-way John Woo gun standoff with a priest and an FBI agent. It's supposed to be outrageous, like, oh my God, this is a trailer moment. This is a big, crazy scene, but it's just tedious. Like, it's not, none of that fun that you can imagine was in his mind makes it on screen.
The tension doesn't come through. We know no one's dying in this scene. You know, there's no gunfight going to break out. It's just plot mechanics.
Exactly.
That being said, it's not an egregiously bad scene, so I give it some credit.
No.
We've been ragging on this movie a lot, and I don't regret it at all. But at the end of the day, Troy Duffy did write and direct a movie and get it made and build a following. Like, he's not entirely bereft of talent or vision. He needed a stronger hand guiding him through this, not Harvey Weinstein, to be clear. But yeah, as much as we are picking apart this movie, it's not the worst movie we've covered. And it's not like there's no moments where you're impressed by it. It's more like it does some of the little things well, but it does none of the big things well. Like, the main characters and their mission and the message of the movie are all really bad. And it makes it hard to appreciate the little things more because of that.
Yeah.
I guess I wanted to qualify my feelings towards this movie because I know there's a lot of fans of it. And I almost feel bad kind of shitting on something I think that they enjoy, but I'm trying to explain why we are so opposed to it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's the big things that sink the little things. And if you watch this movie and you're not too careful, the little things can keep you afloat. And you can go, hey, it's just cool, dopey action. But if you look too closely, it'll ruin your day.
Exactly. Well put. All right. So then we cut straight to them. We don't even get them invading Papa Joe's house, really. You think we're in for another one of his patented, we're going to show you the aftermath and then flash back to them getting captured. But no, they just get dragged into a basement and you're like, oh, all right, I guess they failed at breaking into Papa Joe's house. They run out of money? What happened?
The henchman goes, we caught him trying to come in the basement. You're like, oh, shit. He spent all this money hiring Il Duce to track down these dangerous killers, and then they just caught him coming in through the basement window.
The whole Il Duce father reveal thing is coincidence of all coincidences, but I guess you could say it's divine intervention.
I mean, yeah, you have to go a long way to justify that because the movie, it should have all these threads. It should connect. The boys dress like him. They have tattoos of Latin on their hands and Virgin Marys on their necks. They look like they're the sons of a notorious assassin, and they are, but they're kind of not because it's never explained that they learned anything from him or they even really knew who he was. They only recognize him by the fact that he knows their prayer.
Right. So they were young enough when he went back to Ireland or they came to America. We never really get the backstory, at least in this movie, where they don't recognize him. So how much could they have really learned from him about assassinations? And
right.
If they were that young, it stretches the limits of believability.
He didn't connect the ends of that thread together.
No. I think the second movie deals with it more in depth. I've only seen it the once, and I did not watch it to prepare for this.
Me either.
Let's talk about them in the basement. They shoot Rocco, and then he leaves the room, comes back in, and kills Rocco. Am I remembering that sequence correctly?
You're right. Papa Joe shoots him in the hand as like a thing to torture the boys and get them to talk, I guess, but they're not asking them any questions, just kind of make them feel bad.
Yeah, what are they looking for out of them?
And they're like, be strong, Rocco. You can make it through. Sucks that he shot you in the hand. And then Papa Joe stands outside for a minute, and he goes, wait, and he goes back in, shoots him in the chest, and he dies.
There's a question as to why is he holding them hostage at all?
Right.
To what end? Why don't you just kill? Like, these are the guys that have been after you. You got them. That's why you have all these guys here. That's why you have all this security. That's why you hired Il Duce. You have them. Just fucking kill them. What are you doing? Ask them questions about what? Why are you going to interrogate them now? They were out to get you. Who cares? Maybe you think they work for another mob and you want to find out which one it is. But you also sent your guy to murder the entire Russian mob. What if they didn't just kill Rocco? What if they questioned him? Like, you got to assume it's the Russian mob after you. You started a war. You know who you're at war with. What questions do you have for them? I don't understand the thought process here.
Or give it something about what he does think, but there's kind of nothing. There's just like some milling around in a basement because that's what you do in an action movie. You tie up guys to chairs in a basement.
I breathed such a sigh of relief when Rocco's chest was evaporated. You'd have no idea. Finally, I can start enjoying this movie. And honestly, a decent performance from Sean Patrick Flanery in this scene. He really sells the anguish seeing one of your best friends get killed. He's much stronger than Reedus. And Reedus went on to become a pretty well-known actor, probably the most well-known out of this movie. I'd say he's bigger than Willem Dafoe right now. He's one of the biggest TV stars on the planet. He's semi-one-dimensional. I think he plays one type of character all the time, which is very stoic and a badass, so to speak. But Flanery's got some range in these.
He's good. He's appealing. And he's also the more charming of the two. His smile is easier. His laugh. A lot of the movie is selling the boys on their charm and their easygoing spirit. And Flanery does great at all that. He's actually, like you're saying, he's almost like the star discovery in this movie, although we will talk about it after. It doesn't sound like he went on to do a whole lot with that.
No, he's been a working actor the entire time. He starred in a lot of things, but not a lot of like marquee spots, you know?
Yeah, he didn't have Reedus' career.
And then we've got the Smecker in drag sequence, which is, what do you say about this sequence?
You could say it's out of nowhere, or you could say it's out of Troy Duffy's misguided attempt to represent a gay man on screen, which makes terrible stumbles at every turn, this being the worst one. Or you could say it's a Bugs Bunny reference. I don't know. What do you think?
If you're buying Willem Dafoe as like a hot lady, like women can wear wigs sometimes too. I don't know why the wig coming off is such a turning point for this thug, this henchman.
Right. Exactly.
Why is that, the deal breaker? Women tie their hair up all the time in nets or caps to put a wig on.
Sure.
Not that shocking. But that's, again, it strikes me as, it really is like a Bugs Bunny moment. Everything about him still looks the same as it did 2 seconds ago, except you found out he's wearing a wig and now you know he's a man immediately.
The wig doesn't even come off. The wig shifts and you can see the edge of his hairnet underneath. And the guy goes from full-on Elmer Fudd's mesmerized, steam coming out of his ears. Auga, baby, you're so beautiful. Like, this is a mobster henchman who's right in the middle of securing his boss's house from a notorious killer who they think is outside. And then they're like, oh, wait, there's a lady at the door. And he's like, like, oh my God, I shouldn't do this, but baby, come in. I'm going crazy for you. Like he's so in love with Willem Dafoe in a wig. And then he sees the edge of the wig and he's like, what the fuck? It's pretty comical how quick it changes. And what does it mean? I don't know.
It just kind of reeks of Troy Duffy's limited life experience to be like, only dudes pretending to be girls wear wigs. I don't know. It's not a good look, but neither was Willem Dafoe in that outfit.
And then it's like a De Palma movie because Smecker is wearing this wig and we're over his shoulder and he's going around murdering everybody in sight.
Cool shots. The tracking camera shot of him like over the shoulder shooting all these guys.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. And he's kind of like mumbling to himself, gone too far, crossed the line. That's maybe not selling it, just having him say that out loud. Isn't there another way you could portray this?
I'm an FBI agent. Why am I killing people?
Oh man, I'm breaking the law. I'm committing crimes right now.
I just killed a man.
There's no subtext here. It's all right on the surface. The movie ends with these man on the street interviews, which are like these people who executed a bunch of people in front of innocent bystanders and forced them to watch. Are they actually good or bad? And it's like, how is that even a question? I think the movie up to this point is like, no, they're very good. And then I think somebody told Troy Duffy, hey, maybe they're bad. Because there's no like second guessing throughout the movie. The movie's POV is like, these guys are doing good work. They're men of the people. They're helping clean up the city.
It does feel like another filmmaker made this end sequence. I mean, not the fact that it visually stands out because it's shot as a faux television news person on the street set of interviews. So it has a different look than everything else.
It's also shot in a different city than most of the movie. This was actually shot in Boston.
Oh, okay.
And I read somewhere that you can see Ben Affleck in the background of the guys playing basketball when they're talking to those two guys on the basketball court.
Oh.
But I couldn't see him when I went back to rewatch.
Oh, see, I thought that guy looked like Ben Affleck, and then I did a double take, and it wasn't him.
It wasn't him. Yeah, it looked like discount Ben Affleck.
No.
Extra value Ben Affleck.
But yeah, these people, and I don't know anything about how this was produced. If the people, some of them feel like actors, but some of them feel kind of real. It's almost like you went and asked people on the street a leading question to get them to like talk about this as if it was a real scenario.
Yeah.
And give you their real opinion. It feels really real. It is so self-aware. The way it's cut, it goes right back and forth with all these smart strangers. One person's answer will rebut the last person and put a twist on it. It's really good, is what I'm saying. And it sticks out for being good and smart and self-aware in a movie that is absolutely up its own butthole the rest of the time.
I agree totally, especially about how natural the responses felt.
Yeah.
It did not feel like they fed these people lines. It felt like they gave them a scenario and told them, just run with it. Give us your real opinion about if this was really going on. How would you react? And there's a bunch of guys who are just like, no comment. And little flourishes like that add to the authenticity of it, that if you ask 20 people on the street, you're not going to get 20 responses. Some people are going to tell you to go fuck yourself, especially in Boston. It's more like 18 out of 20 will tell you to go fuck yourself. So yeah, it's a nice capper to the movie, but like, where did it come from?
Yeah, I really have a hard time believing Troy Duffy. Not only I can't picture him producing this and supervising the edit, I can't even picture him approving it because it almost undermines his theme of his movie.
That feels like something like Willem Dafoe suggested to him.
Somebody strong-armed him into showing this. And thank God they did it. It makes you feel better walking out of the film because if it ended cutting to black on the head pulverizing of Papa Joe and then just seeing Billy Connolly going, all right, boys, the question is, do you have the guts to keep murdering people this way? That would have been a really harsh ending.
That feels like a Duffy ending, but that's not what we got.
No, thank God.
So that's the Boondock Saints. Not my favorite movie.
No.
I think there's better versions of this. There's definitely better vigilante movies out there that came before and after the Boondock Saints. I mean, all vigilante movies have ugliness to some degree.
Right.
But we just talked about The Punisher. It's a movie that had some questionable scenes for sure.
It's hard to navigate.
It is. It's a tricky concept. Even Joel Schumacher, when he made Falling Down, to reference Falling Down a second time, like Michael Douglas's character is clearly supposed to be the bad guy of that movie, but there are still people that idolize him. So it's a tight line to walk because you have to trust your audience maybe more than they deserve sometimes.
It's pushing them into tricky ethical questions, which it really takes a bunch of person on the street interviews at the end to try to sort all those ideas out in your head.
Every vigilante movie now should just end with a bunch of man on the street interviews like, were the killers actually good? I don't know. I guess. All right. Do you want to hear some behind the scenes info about this movie more than we have already?
Might as well.
These are some casting what ifs that I think are pretty exciting. Some of the actors that were considered for the Willem Dafoe role. Some of these are going to blow your mind. So if you watched Overnight, you know some of these already. Kenneth Branagh was really Duffy's first choice for that role. Interesting. I think he could probably do it, but we've seen him work with cheesy material in Wild Wild West, and that also did not go well.
That's true.
Patrick Swayze, I guess they met. They clearly talked about it. There's pictures of the two of them together hanging out. He was considered for the role. Kevin Spacey. Luckily, we didn't get that.
Yeah.
Willem Dafoe, much more beloved actor now. The studio studio wanted Sylvester Stallone when it was with Miramax. They wanted Stallone to play the character. I can't see him playing that role.
That would have taken over the movie in such a weird way. I'm trying to picture it. I can't.
The studio countered his Kenneth Branagh, Kevin Spacey suggestions with, what about Bill Murray or Mike Myers?
Okay.
Can't see either of them doing that. Like Myers would probably do it, and he'd be like, also my detective's from Ireland because I got to do an Irish accent. And they'd be like, no, man, he's not from Ireland. And he's like, oh, top of the morning to you, or whatever Mike Myers' Irish accent would be. And then Robert De Niro, just thrown out casually by Troy Duffy, is maybe he'll do it.
Yeah.
1999 Robert De Niro, by the way, or 97 is when they were talking about casting. So that's like Robert De Niro at the height of his powers.
Yeah.
You can't throw him in this pile of shit. For the brothers, the studio wanted Keanu Reeves or Ethan Hawke or Ewan McGregor. You're not getting any of three of those guys in this movie.
No, it's such a B movie that it's really hard to see. Willem Dafoe is weird in it, and he's not the biggest actor, but he's a well-known name, but he feels like he's the stunt casting. But to actually have real stars in these other roles, it would have been so weird.
Agreed. And we know what Troy Duffy thinks about Keanu Reeves and Ethan Hawke. He called Keanu Reeves a fucking punk and Ethan Hawke a talentless fool.
I remember catching that Keanu Reeves comment that's in
Overnight. Yeah, it's on film. There's no denying it. Stephen Dorff was his first choice. Stephen Dorff I could see though. Like that's within your reach if you're this,
yes, exactly.
You have this budget. Mark Wahlberg, we know Mark Wahlberg met with him. There's a lot of footage of Mark Wahlberg on Overnight talking about Troy Duffy. He turned it down apparently to film Boogie Nights, which right call. Good move, Mark.
Oh, good call. Yeah. Big difference. Big swing right there in your career. Could have gone a different way.
Brendan Fraser, which I don't see at all. I don't see him thriving in this role. He was such like a swashbuckling, like good time guy at this point in his career.
Yeah.
Now he can play like, we loved him in No Sudden Move, playing like kind of an aging criminal who's world weary. But when he was young, he was so like, I don't know, he was goofy. You know, he was like a silly man. Even in his action movies, he was pretty much playing like a silly guy.
I could see him as an actor being ready to tackle something and trying something really dark to just try to flip his image. But who knows, with this director who didn't know what the hell he was doing, like that could have been a train wreck.
Nicky Katt was also apparently considered, and I could see Nicky Katt doing good stuff with this role, but he's also like probably like Stephen Dorff and Nicky Katt. Sure, I could see that happening. I don't know why that's unattainable. Nicky Katt played a hitman in The Limey. He was quite good in it.
Oh, okay.
He's a favorite of mine, but he has not had the career he probably deserved. Duffy refused to even meet with Brad Pitt. He'd already done an Irish accent in The Devil's Own, and he thought it wasn't a good accent. But he said, you know what, Norman Reedus, he's got that Irish accent that I like, the kind that sounds like it's from somewhere else entirely. Can you believe that? No, I won't meet with Brad Pitt. As if Brad Pitt would take the fucking meeting.
Brad Pitt was spared being dragged in the gutter. Like, I had secondhand embarrassment watching Overnight and seeing the various big name actors in Troy Duffy's fucking backyard having a little barbecue and sharing beers with him. I'm like, oh God, you really have to lower yourself in Hollywood.
True or false, Ian? You were at that barbecue.
I mean, yeah, I was just flipping burgers on the grill because they asked me to, can somebody work the grill?
I was trying so hard to find a connection from you to this movie. I was like, did you ever go to Jay Sloan's? And you were like, no, I don't think so.
The best I could come up with was like, yeah, I think I had a friend who went there one time. It's not much of a tidbit.
Now it's like a weird Russian-themed nightclub.
Yeah.
I sent you the Instagram page or whatever for it.
All red inside, yeah.
So Jay Sloan's is no more. The Brood, the band, which spurred Duffy's move to the West Coast, changed their name to the Boondock Saints before this movie came out. They did the soundtrack. And their debut album sold about 690 copies.
Wow, 690 million copies? That's amazing.
No, 690. You're not missing any numbers from that.
That's not even one box.
No.
They didn't get to the bottom of the first box of CDs that came out of the factory.
They're not even on Spotify. I think you can hear Holy Fool and Pipes on Spotify because those were the two songs that were in the movie. So the soundtrack to the Boondock Saints is on Spotify. But their actual album, which has like vocals and stuff, is not available on Spotify. You have to go to YouTube to find it, I think.
Yeah, those tracks aren't band tracks. Like you would think they would have snuck a singing rock song in the movie, but no, those tracks that you mentioned are just instrumental. One of them is very traditional Celtic folk music, which is not anything that this band is doing based on what you see them in Overnight.
No, they're playing butt rock.
Yeah, distorted guitar rock. The stuff that made the soundtrack is like, did this band even play it? It's just pipes and flutes and guitars and frame drums.
I'm shocked like the diner scene didn't happen at a nightclub and the Brood was playing on stage. That seems like a very Duffy
classic
move, but we didn't get it. We didn't get it. Feel bad. Some of his other band members, you start feeling bad for them when you watch Overnight, but then you see them do shit like throw a glass at a poor guy just trying to drink by himself or talking about women in a very ungentlemanly manner.
They were all shitty dudes. And it's funny because last week we did Summer of Sam, which we said is like a really interesting movie commenting on 20-somethings and how self-focused they are and unable to see how shitty they are, or they just live with each other even though they know they're all kind of pieces of shit. And then it's fucking lived out for real in Overnight, and you see these guys and they're just these perfect examples of people blinded by their 20s.
I don't know. Were they in their 20s then though?
I hope so. Why? Would they think they were in their 30s?
I could see them being in their 30s.
Yeah, they all seem stunted. They all did seem a little bit too old to be acting the way they were acting.
All right, so let's see what some of these actors ended up doing after this. I don't need to tell anyone what Willem Dafoe is doing, right? The man never stops. 67 now. He was just in Spider-Man No Way Home. Constantly staying busy, taking on interesting projects, big budget projects. He's a plus repeat customer. He was in John Carter.
That's true. I forgot about that. But yeah, the guy's getting on, and I just can't believe as each new Spider-Man thing comes out and he's still capable of going goblin mode. It's amazing.
It is amazing. He can still go goblin mode at 67 years old. Bless his heart. Sean Patrick Flanery, he's like a staple in direct-to-video, direct-to-streaming, scumbag crime movies, action movies.
Okay.
He's staying busy in that. I think he's into jiu-jitsu a lot. He's a jiu-jitsu practitioner. So he had a movie that came out, I think last year called Born a Champion, which is like an MMA movie.
Okay.
It was supposed to be like, okay. I didn't check it out, but he was in season 3 of The Boys. He had a little cameo.
I didn't realize that. I got to go back and spot him.
See if you could find him in there. I haven't watched season 3 yet. I finished season 2. I'm going to keep my eyes peeled for that. And he even did some soap opera work. He was on The Young and the Restless and a soap opera called The Bay. So he's staying busy. And we both liked him in this movie. He's probably one of the better parts of this movie.
Yeah, I would have wanted to see him do more.
Norman Reedus, as we mentioned, is probably the biggest star. He makes like something like $25 million a year from The Walking Dead at this point. He's sitting pretty as Daryl Dixon. He's been in some decent movies. He was in American Gangster, Pandorum, which we're going to talk about.
Okay.
At some point, Blade 2, the best Blade movie. And he starred in a video game called Death Stranding, where you walk around a lot.
Okay.
I haven't played it, but it's him. They just took Norman Reedus and mapped him. That's the character.
And he goes out on auditions and stuff?
Yeah, exactly. And then David Della Rocco, who was Troy Duffy's friend, which is probably why he got this job. He has not done much acting since. He has a cameo in Boondock Saints 2. He does stand-up, does some like actors workshops, stuff like that, but he's not a big name actor. And Billy Connolly stayed busy. He's been in some big budget movies too. He was in The Hobbit, Battle of Five Armies, Last Samurai, The X-Files, I Want to Believe. He did like a series of travel shows in the UK, which were very popular. He's still doing those, I believe, but he retired from comedy in 2018. So he's enjoying his retirement mostly.
Nice.
And that's it, man. That's the Boondock Saints. I struggled with whether or not to cover this because can you really call a movie that basically got no theatrical release a bomb? But I think the disparity between the hype around it when it was first announced and what it ended up, like the unceremoniously way it ended up getting dumped, warranted like an investigation into how it all went down. Does that make sense?
I think it totally makes sense for us to have spent this time with it because it's different from every other direct-to-video movie. This was supposed to be the new sensation in Hollywood. Troy Duffy certainly thought that he was conquering Hollywood and Hollywood conquered him.
It's a machine and it's not an easy one to change from the outside. It's next to impossible. He espoused himself as an outsider in Hollywood and he learned the hard way that comes with downsides as well.
Couldn't get shit done.
Couldn't. And he pissed off the one guy that could probably fuck up your movie in a grand way.
And was willing to be as big an ass as he was.
The scenes of them on the phone with each other and overnight are brutal to watch. You don't even hear Harvey Weinstein's voice. I don't think he appears. You don't even hear him. You just hear Troy Duffy's side of the conversations. And it's pretty damning. You can just imagine those two being a nightmare to hang out with.
You don't want to be in the middle of that.
Did you have any closing thoughts on the movie?
Let me reiterate something that I said very quickly during this episode. First of all, my final thought is it's finally over. We're done with Boondock Saints. This movie loomed over us for a while. I'm glad to be moving on from it at this point. But like I said, it's a movie that I was slightly fooled by on the first watch. I was fooled by its trappings. If you don't pay close attention, it mimics the patterns of an action movie. So if you give it the benefit of the doubt and you're like, whatever they just said in that scene, I'm sure it explains what's going on here and why they're shooting these guys. And you go, yeah, and it was a fun action movie. And then you rewatch and you lean in and you go, oh, that's why they said they were doing that? And then it bums you out. The points that the movie's actually making are bad, and that brings the whole movie down. So folks, if you're going to watch this after being inspired by us, don't turn it up too loud. Drink something, smoke something, and try to just enjoy the visual aspects of it.
I'm typically not a champion of the turn your brain off mindset when it comes to watching movies. I think you should expect more from your filmmakers because even a dumb movie can be smart, if that makes sense. But this is one where, this is a dumb movie that's also dumb.
Yeah.
And you just got to take it at face value. And if you like it, that's okay. There was a period in my life where I thought this movie was awesome, but I just don't think there's anything this movie does that other movies don't do a lot better. So it could be a fun gateway to a type of movie, but it's just something I can't hold on to.
No.
So that was the Boondock Saints. But next week, we're staying in this era, but we're countering one of my least favorite movies with one of my favorites.
Oh, nice.
We're watching Dark City, baby.
Ooh.
Not Dark City Baby. Dark City Baby.
I'm the baby in that sentence.
You've never seen it, huh?
I haven't seen it. I'm coming to this as a babe in the city. Wait, it's not babe. Pig in the city. It is Dark City. I've seen parts of it. I tried to watch it. It's very dark visually. This one, you need a quiet room and you need to turn the movie up. And that's what I need to do to really get in and absorb this film.
It's a smart movie, not a smart, dumb movie. But it's going to be fun to talk about Alex Proyas and what the fuck happened to him. He has had a interesting career post Dark City, and it'll be a trip to go down and see where he's been since then. I haven't watched it in a few years, and it's one of my favorite movies. So I'm really excited to dig into it. Look at it with a more analytical eye than I have the last few times I've watched it. It's a visually arresting movie. It's easy to lose yourself in it, but I'm gonna have to pay close attention.
Gonna be fun.
So thank you guys so much for listening. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe to the pod. If you can, we would appreciate it.
Thank you.
Send us an email, blastzonepod@gmail.com. We've been getting some emails lately. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Some people writing in suggestions, which we've taken, some of which are already on the schedule, some of which we've added to the schedule. So
Neat.
That's great to see. Love it. You can also follow us on Twitter @BlastZonePod. Usually every Friday we drop a teaser for the next week's movie, so you can keep up to date if you don't listen to the end of the episodes. A lot of people don't. I don't blame you.
It's hard. We talk a lot.
Yeah, we do talk a lot. We'll see you next time in the Blast Zone.
See you next time in the Blast Zone.